Welcome to the Tie-Dyed Therapist. I'm your host, Richard Killian. And today, for a second time this week, I have my dear friend and colleague, Stephanie Legatos, who is a job coach, a career coach, resume writer, woman of all trades. And she's going to talk to me today about coaching and therapy and resilience and all kinds of great stuff.
So we've got take two today, don't we?
You know, I did this deliberately because I just wanted to see you again.
Yes, and we had such a wonderful conversation yesterday. Let's see where today's conversation goes.
Well, we always have a good time. I just appreciate your patience with me as I learn technology. You'd think I would be better at this than I am.
Oh, well, you know, it's I always just find it fascinating that we do something with technology and then it always works. So our expectation is it's going to work.
Right.
And then who knows, something goes awry. And that's part of what we're here to talk about today anyway, right? We're sort of talking about resilience and also about the differences between counseling and coaching and referrals. And I felt that after we got off our Zoom meeting yesterday, and when you told me what happened, well, talk about resilience. Here we are.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, round two.
Round two.
So I hope they keep the first part of this conversation because I think it's funny. I think it's good.
Well, go ahead. Hey, go ahead and keep it. It's all pertinent to the topic, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's asking me to start now. Okay, so I will start.
Oh, I see that. It didn't even get recorded. So here we are.
Okay.
All right.
So always have a good conversation with you whenever we meet, right?
Yes, we do.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here. And I'm so thrilled that you launched this series to support your work and support the wisdom cards. Even that we're not here to specifically talk about them, but just a wonderful addition to the world. Very, very helpful.
I appreciate that. So, well, first of all, we should start out by just having people understand a little bit more about your background and how you got to be where you are. And I know it's varied, but it's a great skill set that you have.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so, my background has always been a mix. And as a career and job search coach, I feel that I've been very fortunate in having these very divergent paths that come together. And not everyone has experienced that. So I originally was volunteering as a job search counselor and coach for a nonprofit organization, and got just really interested in the work. I had never really known about career counseling. And in the Boston area, it's, as I think you know from living here for some time, it's very competitive. I knew I needed to return and get a master's degree, which I did. Since that time, so probably for about 25 years or so, have been really working a dual track on career and job search coaching, working with individuals, but also on presentation and facilitation and instructional design, and doing webinars on quote unquote soft skills, which are now being called workplace success skills. Love that term much more. I think giving a lot more credibility to those soft skills that are really life skills, and doing webinars on various aspects of the job search process and also on resilience and stress management.
Right. And you've worked with so many different organizations and so many individuals in the last 25 years, right? And
yeah,
helped
so
them throughout the whole process.
Yeah, that's been part of things too, is, working with nonprofits, a couple of nonprofits in the Boston area that have training programs to help retrain people, to allow them, for most of the people in the programs, to get back into the job market, or to gain the technical skills that they need, so that they're in a position to really get either a more senior position, or something where the salary really is much more competitive.
Right.
And I've worked in and out of the MassHire Career Center system. I'm thinking back, the early 90s.
Oh my goodness. Right.
That was just a wonderful experience. I feel so fortunate, really, and blessed that I have met so many different people at different stages of their job search and career, from so many professions and industries. And that's just been fun.
Yes.
That's been
Well,
fun and interesting.
yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I think the whole field of career development has done such radical changes over the years, right? I mean, when you started, probably there was like the unemployment office,
Mm-hmm.
and what that conjured up for people that had to go to the unemployment office, right? And I think it's just changed so much now because people really have many more options, I think. There's just more ways to look at some of these problems about employment than there ever were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the system as a whole, when we think about the sort of federally and state funded system, but also the workforce development system, at least in Massachusetts, but I think really across the country, I think really met the changing needs of its customers.
By design.
Instead of it being sort of transactional around unemployment, it was like, okay, well, great. we offer that, but what else can we do to help people get back to work faster?
Well, faster and also more productively.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're not just filling seats, but they're actually figuring out what are people's strengths? What do people want to do?
Mm-hmm.
How do we, create a workforce that is stronger, more effective, more trained,
Mm-hmm.
right? More fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true on the systemic end of things. Again, I can speak more to Massachusetts and other stories I've heard from some other states and things that I've read, but a lot of the workforce and employment related systems are partnering with businesses. So I know that in the Boston area, there are some MassHire career centers that are, manufacturing is making a comeback in Massachusetts, and there's a partnership with specific companies for people to get trained or retrained with the newer technology that's being used in manufacturing.
Yes.
And providing apprenticeships or internships for people, so they don't just get the training and then they're left on their own, but they have a connection with specific companies that the workforce development system has partnered with. Others are partnering with community colleges, because community colleges have been making a very concerted and successful effort to tap into the business needs of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, a 3-point win all around. It helps the workforce development system and people who are unemployed. It helps support the community colleges, and it helps fill the need in a specific local geographic area for businesses who just can't, who can't find the labor and the employees that they need.
Right.
And I think for people also, I think part of what you're alluding to, Richard, is it's showing people who are in career transition for whatever reason, or job transition for whatever reason, there are opportunities and there are possibilities and there's assistance. I think naturally I'm a resourceful person, so I have a belief that the resources exist. And that's
Yes.
kind of what I bring to my work, because I think that often with people, whether they have gotten laid off, so the clients that I have been working with and typically work with either have already been laid off, know they're going to be laid off, or they're unhappy with their work for some reason. And there's still a mindset that I find that people think, I got to figure this out myself.
Yes.
And you can, you can. It takes longer and it's more frustrating.
Yeah, it's kind of painful sometimes.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And so to know that, again, that resources are out there, and I can already see today's conversations going in a little bit different direction from yesterday. That's totally
Yeah.
fine. Nobody's seeing what happened yesterday. But we were talking about resilience, and resourcefulness is a key part of that.
Of course. Yes.
Well, first of all, knowing it's the support piece, which across all the studies and research that has been done shows that that is the number one key factor in resilience, is some support network, and even one person who you could talk to about anything. So if we open that up and just think about how does that support come into play during a job search or during a career transition?
Well, and also to just tie into that, we were talking yesterday about the connection between therapists and coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Also the differences between them, right? Because there were some blurred lines that we determined.
Yes.
So you're talking, and I'm really glad you brought this up at the beginning about all the practical concerns that people have in getting a job and finding a job and keeping a job, right? But then there's all the underlying stuff that goes with that. All the ways that people are resistant to change, all the ways that people are ambivalent or running into barriers of some kind emotionally, and how coaches work with that, how coaches and therapists work with that, how coaches and therapists even sometimes work together on things like that, depending on who it is and what the issues are.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Absolutely. And I've encountered all of that in my private career and job search coaching practice, that, we're looking at, because there are issues. And even something as seemingly simple as a resume brings things up for people.
Right.
So you can see where maybe people don't have a very strong sense of their confidence in finding work, or confidence in their value and the value that they have contributed in different jobs or at different companies. I see that come up, just asking the question, okay, well, what would you say are the high points of your work? Or what would you consider your top 3 accomplishments in this job?
And they can't tell you.
And they can't, exactly. They can't say it. So you do see those things. And so I've never seen the career and job search coaching as something sort of separate from life, kind of a component that you can take and move over here. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
It is life, right? It is part
Yes.
of life. It's so much of our identity. And I think that's, another piece. Often when people get laid off, they feel as if, who am I?
Yes.
Who am I? Who can I say I am right now? Because I don't actually have a job title,
Yeah.
as a framework. And so I think there are levels, when I think about sort of where is the line. So if I see, I'm very action oriented in my work. So at the end of every meeting with somebody, there's usually some things that I've committed to doing, but there are also things that I and the client have committed to that they're going to do.
Right.
And if I see, okay, so maybe a week or comes up or 2 weeks, and they've done only one thing out of 5, or they haven't done any. Well, sometimes things go awry, right? Life happens. So I've a client recently, unexpectedly, her daughter is here for a longer part of the summer than she had anticipated. Well, you know what? That's become the priority. That makes sense. However, if over time people are not doing anything on their action plan, and there are reasons, I don't know, I didn't really feel confident doing it. I don't really know how to do it. I'm not sure it's going to make any sense. To spend time, or I don't know how it's going to make a difference. Nobody's going to hire me anyway. Whatever, all the thoughts, right?
All the chatter.
The thinking and the chatter that can go into it. So when I see that over time, there's one example, I start to think, what else is going on here? Is there something else going on? And I think it's really important for all of us as career and job search coaches to understand what our training is and where our limitations are, and where it's helpful to reach out to a resource and make a referral or ask the person, are they working with a therapist? Are they working with a counselor? I see that also. I can think of a recent client. We got very, very little work done on our calls. Most of the calls were focused on her venting about her sense of not being valued at work and being afraid of being fired.
Oh.
So we had both of those things go on. So maybe the last 10 minutes, we could actually focus on something practical. Well, to me, that was another situation where it was important to have the conversation. Are you working with a therapist? This is what I'm noticing. So she had a huge level of anxiety, and her anxiety was so high. It was really, her performance evaluations were good, but I think it was really affecting her own well-being, her mental well-being, but also her physical well-being.
Right.
It wasn't really affecting anything at work. And then we weren't taking the time needed for her to be well prepared for a job search.
Correct.
So then she was going into a job search with all of this anxiety. So that's another example.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but what she was also coming in with was a personal narrative that, she wasn't even paying attention to what she was saying to herself. But basically what she was reinforcing through her thoughts and through her corresponding feelings was that, who wants to hire me? Mm-hmm. That was becoming part of the story. Mm-hmm. And something that I always share with clients that I start seeing is about what a personal narrative does to people. Mm-hmm. We all have a narrative. We edit these narratives every day of our lives about what kind of people we are, what we like, who we like, what we don't like, what our history is. I always laugh when I say this to people, but the fastest and easiest question that a therapist can get the most information from is you say, tell me about yourself. The minute you say that, people launch into their narrative, right? Mm. So what you were getting in those sessions with that client was a big dose of, this is my personal narrative. This is what I think about my situation and about myself.
Yes.
And, you know, it's so understandable that people have these things going on. They don't even pay attention really fully to what they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
you know, until it's pointed out. And then they start realizing, wow, if I'm giving myself these messages and I'm giving my career coach these messages, well, how else does this get translated to other people, other groups,
Yes.
places I'm interviewing with?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And you're so right about that. And it's an interesting question in the context of your work, because I think about it in terms of networking and interviewing. It's one of the key questions in an interview. It has been for a long time and still is the tell me about yourself, right? And you know that my work is about coaching people to think about how to tell about themselves in the context of the role and the company and the needs. So it really has to be edited.
Yes.
However, I found this often with people over the age of 50 or in their 60s. And I'm just going to just sort of do an aside here is I'm not saying age bias and age discrimination doesn't exist. It does. However, it's that personal narrative, right? And that mindset that if you bring that in, that really it's a filter. It colors the whole picture of
Yes.
how you're presenting yourself, both visually, but also in what you say and your tone and your level of enthusiasm and motivation and interest, right?
That's
It
right.
shows up, right?
That's right.
It shows up.
Right. So we just talked about the narrative of somebody who might be older coming into the workplace, but then you could reverse it and say, oh, well, I'm 22 years old. I've never had a job. I just got out of college, right? What's that narrative look like? And how is that
Exactly.
colored? And what does that person lead with?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep. And throughout my career, there were, you know, times where I worked on contract at some universities and colleges. I was at Northeastern University, Tufts University, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and UMass Lowell, and mostly working with juniors and seniors. And you're right, because that sense of age bias happens on
The other
on the
side.
earlier end too. The seniors would say, oh, okay, well, great. I did a, you know, 3-month internship here. You know, who's going to want me, right? It's the same thing. But I think sort of to step back and say, well, you know, it's part of it is there's always crossover in career work to the life pieces because you're still working with the whole person, but
Yes.
still understanding there could be a point and is a, you know, will be a point that there's something else going on that I'm not equipped for as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have done a lot of work and have given homework on like the inner critic and the inner coach and having people keep a journal and notice things. So that's part of the thinking also, right? I think that probably plays into that, you know, personal narrative. You know, but again, I think one of the key things for me is if someone is experiencing physical symptoms as a result of their job search or their work, that's a referral point.
Right.
You know, again, I think there are always things that, you know, that people can do. And I think, as I had mentioned to you before, when I on my resilience work, I came up with a model. You know, coaches and consultants love models and acronyms, right?
Yeah.
So I came up with this model called BEST, BEST, because I started thinking about, well, you know, who are we? You know, what is this holistic picture? And B, body, right? All of the, right, the somatic piece, which
right. Physical.
so much has been written about. E, emotions. S, social and spiritual. So this is about connection on both levels, that personal level in your life, but also connected to something larger than you, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, right.
It can be nature, it can be animals, it can be trees, it can be God, it can be goddess, the universe, whatever, however that appears for you and however you're connected to that. And the last T and the last piece of the BEST model is thinking. And there's no particular order, it just made a great acronym.
Yes.
But that it's all of those pieces of resilience, and that I think that's where there are similarities in our work. You know, similarities between coaching and counseling is, I think we are trying to build resilience, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to build people's capacity and have them maintain a capacity where they can better manage whatever is happening in their lives,
right.
And whatever might happen, right? Because there's always going to be something. Like,
well, right. Resilience is a lifelong kind of process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you've lost a job, lost a girlfriend, lost your money, whatever it is.
This morning, my car engine light went on.
Lost a car.
It's sort of like, oh, okay. I mean, I had like that reaction of irritation right away because I thought, now what? Now what? I just put $800 into car repairs. Now what? But that's a point of resilience. I'm like, okay, luckily I have public transportation nearby if I need it.
Right. And you've learned how to roll with things over the years. And, so I loved the whole model of BEST, right? Because it really gives people clues as to what's going on. This whole thing about the B, the body, the somatic experience, how many times people have these things going on in their body when they're totally stressed out, totally worried, anxious, whatever it is.
Yes.
And they automatically leap to the conclusion that it's something really seriously medical, like cancer or something like that, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I'm saying that our bodies give us little signs and little indications all the time about how we're handling stress in our lives.
Yes.
And how often do we not pay attention to it, or we either minimize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we make it into something it was never meant to be, right?
Yes, and of course, I think we would both agree, go get things checked out medically.
Of course.
Right? We're not going to overlook that piece. And it's all one. Right.
Yes.
So this morning, just driving to my mechanic's to see when he had time that I could actually leave the car to have it looked at. I listened to a little snippet of an interview with Ellen Langer, who has done a lot of research and a lot of teaching on mindfulness. And she said, we talk a lot about the mind-body connection. She said, I don't think there's a mind-body connection. There's mind and body. It's one and the same.
Oh, that's
and I think, in the holistic field, I think certainly in neuroscience, the past, 5 to 10 years has demonstrated this over and over and over again, that our emotions and what we think are embedded in the cells of our body, right?
Yes.
It is one and the same. And by studying, being able to do MRIs. There's a wonderful person whose name I cannot remember, but he is connected both with Harvard Medical School, and he's also teaching in the divinity school at Harvard.
Oh,
and he's
interesting.
teaching around science and spirituality and neuroscience.
Okay.
And I was on a webinar with him, and he showed images of when people meditate or people are changing their cognitive thought process and changing the narrative and using affirmations or starting to think about themselves in more healthy ways, open-minded ways, that we form new neural pathways.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you can see it now. You actually can see it in MRIs. So we really are, we really are all one. And I think that stress and anxiety, sadness, grief, joy, let's not just talk about the quote unquote,
right.
the
Good
emotions
stuff.
we don't want,
Right.
but it all shows up. And it's about, noticing. And when I think about that in the context of career coaching, I just think about, when I've worked with people on their resumes and I've asked lots of questions, and they're able to start talking about their accomplishments and their value and what makes them unique. You can hear the tone of their voice changes.
Yes.
And people have said to me, wow, who is this person on paper? Because I take all of that, right, and recreate a resume. Who is this person on paper? Wow.
Right.
That's you.
That's you.
That's you.
Well, and something I always notice is like how excited people get when they talk about certain things. Whether they're talking about, their careers or accomplishments or the people that they love or their children or animals or whatever it is, when you hear this excitement, you know that, this goodness that's in their life is part of their resilience, right?
Yes.
I mean, we were talking yesterday about, all the benefits of gratitude. We were talking about the benefits of holding on to really good things and to keeping our thinking on track with that. Right? The thing the thing I had mentioned yesterday, which I think it still is a good thing to mention today, is, what do you say to yourself in the mornings? What do you tell yourself? And I had heard a podcast with this woman named Sonia Choquette. She's on YouTube a lot. And she has this little mantra that she says every morning, which is expect great things. And I started doing that the last month or so. And what was great about it, talking about great things, is even days that I had that were really awful. And I had quite a few of them this summer. And I could always find something good that happened that particular day. Even if it was one thing, even if it was one small thing, I could say that was a great thing that happened. And it would set my day, it would set the tone up right, no matter what happened. And I think that that's part of resilience too. It's not about it's about the ability to deal with life on its own terms, day by day. Good things, bad things that we perceive, expectations.
Yes. And you're right. It's day by day. It's not just, capital R resilience. It's every day, because we don't know from moment to moment.
Right.
We might think we know. And that's another thing that this woman who was being interviewed this morning said, we don't notice because we think we know. But she said, I just continually see situations where I think I know and I realize I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. And I think the resilience piece is it is a practice. It's something that we do need to practice. I think most of us do something that builds our resilience naturally.
Yes.
And many of us would be helped by doing those things more and doing new things. So
Right.
it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what it is. You can dance in your living room. Sometimes I do that because if I have 5 minutes, what can I do to get my energy back up?
Yes.
I
Right.
may be dreading a phone conversation or a meeting or whatever that might be. So how am I going to get that energy back up where I'm feeling at least more even keel? Right? And good for you. And it's a wonderful, wonderful example that you shared of again, it's a way of changing your thinking, of
Yes.
expect great things, because then you're going to look for things that are great, right? You're going to notice more, you're going to observe more, you're going to pause to think more and get out of that automatic,
Yes.
whatever automatic thinking is there. And the other day, it also reminds me, I was on a webinar with Mark Nepo, Nepo, who is a poet and author and has written, I don't know, probably a dozen books. And, he had a diagnosis when he was in his 30s of a very rare form of cancer. And he's 72 right now. And he said something maybe not profound, but it felt profound in the moment, even though I've heard it before. And that is, everything is extraordinary. So if you expect great things, I would imagine, I'm sort of thinking, if I woke up every morning and I said expect great things, that over time I might really see the extraordinary in the ordinary. Yeah. I might start to notice more and more and more. And there's been I'm starting to read more and hear more about awe, having a sense of awe, having a sense of wonder.
Curiosity.
Well, where does that come from? That comes from an open-mindedness and an open-heartedness. And that's what I hear in the story that you just shared.
Well, that's true. I mean, I did a little wisdom card thing the other day on Spirit of Curiosity, which is one of my favorite cards. And it really talks about this idea that if you look at things with a spirit of curiosity, it helps you not go down this path of confrontation and conflict and, looking for trouble. I mean, you're just kind of looking at things in a light of, I'm going to observe this. I'm going to see how this plays. I mean, therapists are sort of trained to do this anyway. We look for dynamics. We look at the way things unfold. We look at patterns of behavior, right? And so that kind of ties into what you're saying about, the extraordinary and just sort of observing all of this, mindfulness.
Yes.
So many of the things that you talked about BEST, the model BEST, have to do with CBT. And, that's sort of our connection here is the idea that your thinking impacts your emotions and how the emotions then impact, your physical symptoms, your body, and how important all of that is, how it's all interconnected. It all has to be in alignment in order for it to really work well.
Yes.
One of the things that you pointed out that I don't want to forget mentioning was that 3-stage thing that you were talking about yesterday about how people, when they're not resilient, become isolated, right? They keep themselves apart from other people at times. And then there's that thing that happens, which is called rumination.
Yes.
And for those of people that don't understand what rumination is, the best explanation I have for that is, you might stay up all night thinking about a problem. You might go over and over in your head different possible solutions for it, or you just keep cycling over and over again. And by the time you get to the end of the night, you still don't have a solution, and you still have the problem, and it's just even more frustrating than when you began. Right? And so then there's the isolation, there's the rumination, and then of course there's the withdrawal.
Yes.
The withdrawal that happens when you're not connecting with people on a social basis, you're sticking to yourself, you're living in your own mind, and you finally become withdrawn. And then, of course, from a mental health standpoint, that leads to depression, anxiety, all kinds of problems.
Right. And you see the same things happen or I see the same things happen, in a job search, right? People can, people can think about, again, whatever, who's going to hire me? No one's going to hire me. I don't have the tech skills. Whatever it is. It's the same sort of sentence with some slightly different words.
Yes.
And then again, the rumination can be around, why me? Why did I get laid off? Oh, I shouldn't have said that at that meeting. I never got along with my boss. I didn't confront things. I should have done this, right? It goes on and on and on. And then you do see people withdraw. I mean, I often would say to people, please don't develop an intimate relationship with your computer. But that's what people do. It's, there's a nice little control or sense of control, right? Right here,
yes.
Your laptop, right? You're all set. And the world, again, I'm not dismissing or downplaying anything, because I think, I have been unemployed several times in my life. It's scary.
Yeah.
It is a scary place to be. It personally, because you do start wondering about your own wellness,
your future,
your livelihood, and then depending on what commitments you have to other people and financial commitments, right? All of that comes into play. But that piece about the rumination, as you said, the isolation, and then the withdrawal, and I think that's where resilience practices can start to make a difference, because part of what's helpful, whether we're looking this through a career coaching end of things or a counseling and therapeutic, end of things, is you want people to re-engage with things that are pleasurable.
Right. That's right.
And that's what helps cut through usually all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And a basic resilience practice is to go take a walk.
Yeah, right.
Someplace where you like to be. Again, even if it's for 5 minutes. Oh, you can't go take a walk there? Well, do you have a photo of a place that you've been that you feel so happy? Look at that photo.
Yeah.
Or find it online. You don't even have to be, there are benefits, of course, to being out in nature. But if for some reason you can't be, looking at a photo will generate the same kinds of chemical reactions in the body, in the mind, to put you into that more pleasurable state. And when we're in that state, we are more open. We've just become more open.
Well, that's it. I think there are as many resilient practices as there are people. I can think of a dozen different things that people can do, and whether it's like physical activity, mental activity, games, puzzles, reading, going to the museum, all kinds of things that on the surface people say, oh, how's that going to get me over my depression? How's that going to help me with something? It's the sheer fact that there's energy, there's movement being exerted.
Yes.
Like a lot of times when I'm feeling down, I think about something good that I can do for somebody else. And usually it's something really simple. It might be I take out a card and I write a note to somebody that I haven't talked to in a long time. Or I notice the neighbor did something good and I want to reward that. So I bake. I bake a lot, bake too much. But anyway, I do things like that. Simple little things. I don't spend a lot of money on things, but I do try to observe what other people are going through. So I try to take myself out of my own head for a moment.
And it has been studied that is one of the best things to get you, number one, socially reconnected and re-involved with something pleasurable, is do something helpful for somebody else, and you will reap the benefits of it.
Yes, I know. And it sounds so trite, right? It sounds so simplistic. Yeah, and yet people have been doing this for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't invent this. This has been around a long time.
Right.
So, I want to leave people with the idea that, number one, resilience is a lifetime practice. And when I say practice and you say practice, we mean like we really practice it. We do something different every day. We try to stir something up here. But it's also that you can do whatever it is that makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a specific recipe that you have to do certain things, but it's about engaging different aspects of yourself in ways that are healthy, that are helpful for you.
Yes, and that it is about practicing it, and then it's knowing that it's there inside of you. Again, it's an inner resource that you have where okay, I'm really upset today about this thing that happened at work. Oh, I'm going to open that new bottle of wine that I have. Well, you can. Don't get me wrong. I love wine. But what is it going to do? Or you can say, I just need to sit for 5 minutes on my sofa. Or if you live with other people, to say, I'm going to take the long way home because I need that extra 10 minutes with myself.
Yes.
Or when I walk in the house, I'm going to say, you know what? I can't really be present right now and I want to be. I'm just going to go, in the bedroom for 5 minutes and then I'll be back.
Right. And I'm not going to call people on the phone, and I'm going to not text, and I'm going to just be with myself.
Mm-hmm. Or whatever, whatever that is, it's sort of remembering once we start doing things, those resources are with us. It's then about being able to access those resources, right? And I think that's also part of the the similarities, in our work, is helping people remember what resources they have, in addition to also doing some things differently. And, it's people, I think, are maybe tired of hearing the word gratitude. You mentioned it earlier, but it continues to be, again, with support, one of the top things that really makes a difference, that builds resilience, that helps people get back into balance, of just finding something to be, to be grateful for.
Yes. And having perspective.
Yes, and put things in perspective, and helps you get, just reconnected. And whatever that is, there's big things, right? People are grateful for their jobs, a roof over their heads, friends and family. And there are little things too, like, the food that's in your refrigerator, a phone call from a friend, hearing bird song,
Yes.
seeing a smile on a child's face. I don't know, even looking, at the clouds.
Yeah. Right.
There's so many things for us to be grateful for. And again, it just goes back, I think, to noticing the really astonishing abundance that we have in our lives.
Right.
And again, it's not a kind of, let's just sort of make everything Pollyannish and wash over. There are people who are in much more dire circumstances than
Yes.
I. And still I say it is where does gratitude play a role, and how can gratitude play a role? There is a wonderful, wonderful documentary. You can find it on YouTube. It's simply called Gratitude. It's an 11-minute film produced by Louis Schwartzberg.
Louis Schwartzberg. I don't know if I know.
Schwartzberg. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. And anyone who is watching this, just go on YouTube, look up Gratitude, Louis Schwartzberg. You will find it.
YouTube or Netflix? You said Netflix earlier.
Oh, no, YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
It's on YouTube. It's there. It's free. And when I was doing webinars both webinars, but also in-person workshops on resilience and stress management, I showed this film over and over and over again. I've probably seen it, 200 times.
Gosh.
It still brings me to tears.
Wow.
Because of things we just take for granted. And it's just amazing. Definitely worth 11 minutes.
I'm glad. I'm going to have to check it out when we're done.
Yeah.
So
it's wonderful.
Anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming back. I'm sorry that people didn't get to see the first conversations. The first conversation was fantastic as well. But, I think we accomplished what we intended to today. And I am very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you. And until next time, folks, I'll see you later on the Tie-Dye Therapist. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Be well, everyone.